So today, with this Senior Sunday, I was putting together the message, and the further I got and the more I got, the message turned from being a message for our seniors and for our seniors to our seniors to actually being a good lesson for the entire church. And so today, we're going to look at happiness. Happiness. That is a big word. Perry, that was the middle of Perry when he came up to share about our new discipleship and worship pastor. Happiness was his middle word, right? Happy. It's a happy day. What is happy? Some of us spend our entire lives looking for happiness. Not some of us. All of us spend our entire lives looking for happiness. In fact, it reminds me of a story about a man that just his whole life, he was just unhappy with everything in his life. Everything had been a failure. His family, his job, just everything had not gone right in this man's life. So he was searching on his phone, scrolling through his phone one day, and he saw an advertisement that came up for a mute monastery. And he thought, man, that's just what I need. Somewhere where there is nobody talking. So he looks at the ad, gets the address, and he takes off and he goes to this mute monastery and he goes into the head monk, and the head monk tells him, okay, so here's how this works. You sign up for 5 years, and when you serve your 5 years, at the end of that, you come in and you get 2 words every 5 years. And he thought, man, that's perfect. It's what I need in my life, something peace and quiet. I got to get away from the world. So he signs up, spends his first 5 years. At the end of those 5 years, he gets called into the head monk's office. He comes in, he sits down, the head monk looks at him. He said, okay, for these 5 years, what's the 2 words, what have you been thinking about for these 5 years? So he sits there for a second, his 2 words were bad food. Okay? So he signs up for another 5 years, and he goes, spends his 5 years. At the end of his 5 years, he goes back in. The head monk says, okay, you've spent 10 years now. What's your 2 words? Hard bed. So he goes again. He signs up for yet another 5 years, spends his 5 years. At the end of now 15 years, he goes back in. The head monk says, okay, now then, you've spent 15 years here. What have you thought about for the last 5 of your 15-year stint? And the guy looked at him straight in the eye and he said, I quit. The head monk turns around and he says, well, doesn't surprise me. All you've done is complain since you've been here. So happiness, even plenty of times throughout history, you even have Abe Lincoln, a quote from Abe Lincoln that said, a man is about as happy as he makes up his mind to be. That's pretty good word right there. The next thing, happiness. Our founding fathers thought enough about happiness to include part of it, or the word at least, into the Declaration of Independence. And here's what it says. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's why we were in America. We didn't like what was happening. We came for happiness, to get away from all the many things, the persecution that was happening overseas. And our founding fathers wove that into our Declaration of Independence. So seniors and church members, we're asking, we're going to graduate here next week. Will I find happiness? Church members, some of us, no matter how old or young we are, some of us, if this was the gauge of life right here, some of us are at the bottom. Seniors, you're about a quarter of the way up. The rest of us, some of us are halfway. Some of us are almost to that last step up there. We're all still searching for happiness, right? True happiness. We search every day. We get up and we work, we toil, And what I'm here today to share with you is a man named Solomon. If you'll go to Ecclesiastes, okay? Solomon, the wisest man that ever lived, right? Because he asked God for wisdom and not for money and possessions. So as you're finding your way there, Solomon wrote 3 books in the Bible. First of all, when he was younger, he wrote Proverbs, which are little nuggets of great scripture that you can live by. There's certain ones for every season of your life. When he was kind of middle-aged and in his prime, he wrote the Song of Solomon, and if you've ever read that, you know he was in his prime when he wrote that. And then later on in life, as he got older and things were happening, he wrote Ecclesiastes towards the end of his life because he had been searching for happiness his entire life. Now you might ask, why would I choose Solomon? And I'm gonna share with you that because Solomon had everything there was. If anybody could have found happiness, Solomon should have been that guy, right? We have a couple guys that you hear in the news all the time. One of them's the man that owns Amazon, Jeff Bezos, okay? You also have Elon Musk. He's in the news all the time. And these guys have what most people would consider unlimited wealth, unlimited resources. But they're not happy, okay? Solomon, God-given, had all the wisdom that a person could ever want, but he was also as rich or richer than Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. And he searched for happiness. And I'm going to tell you what he found. If you go, and you're going to look in your Bible, and this week I study from, I'm kind of slow, I have to study for 3 or 4 different Bibles, and in the English Standard Version that Duncan preaches from, it gets it's a little more complicated. So Duncan's going to laugh at me. I told him to not fall out of the pew because I'm going to read from the New Living Translation, and I know some people don't agree but it's a little easier. It's a little easier translation for this, what I'm meaning. But here's what Solomon tells us, starting in verse 2. The title for this that I'm going to read is Everything is Meaningless. Okay? Some of your Bibles will say vanity. And vanity is not what's in your bathroom. And vanity is also not somebody that thinks that we call vain. Vanity in your translation in the Hebrew is like a mist, okay? Like a fog, like your breath on a cold morning, okay? Something you can't grasp is what vanity is. But in the New Living Translation it says this: everything is meaningless, says the teacher, completely meaningless. What do people get for all their hard work under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth never changes. The sun rises, the sun sets, then it hurries around to rise again. The wind blows south, the wind turns north. Around and around it goes, blowing in circles. Rivers run into the sea, but the sea is never full. Then the water returns again to the rivers and flows out again to the sea. Everything is wearisome beyond description. No matter how much we see, we are never satisfied. No matter how much we hear, we are not content. History merely repeats itself. It has all been done before. Nothing under the sun is truly new. Sometimes people say, here is something new, but it's actually old. Nothing is ever truly new. We don't remember what happened in the past, and in future generations, no one will remember what we are doing now. And is those last couple of verses, is that not true? Has anybody that was alive during the 70s and can remember we had bell-bottom jeans. And if you look around, they're back. Nothing is new. People think it is, but it's not. But Solomon is telling us right here, right off the bat, at the end of his life, that everything that's on earth is just a cycle. It's just over and over and over. And we might think that we are a big deal. But guess what? When we die, it's about the difference between a good and a bad haircut. It's about 2 weeks. And once we die, unless we've done some kingdom work that people are going to remember, they're not going to remember us by anything, by our house, somebody new will buy our house eventually. And that's what Solomon had come to realize with all the stuff that he had tried. And he tried many things. Okay, he had unlimited possessions and wealth. He was the wisest man in the Bible. And if you go on through here, I'm going to kind of hit the high notes, and you need to go back and read this whole book sometime. But he tried to find happiness with wisdom. Okay? If you go verse 13 and 14, he talks about it. I devoted myself to wisdom for search for understanding and to explore by wisdom everything being done under heaven. And he talks about even with wisdom, it was like trying to grab the wind. It was worthless. He also tried to find happiness in wine. Chapter 2, verse 3, after much thought, I decided to cheer myself up with wine. Well, guess what? That didn't work either. Doesn't work for us today. Maybe for the short term, but not true happiness. He tried to find happiness with works. Okay, the works of his hands. If you keep going, chapter 2, verse 4, he says he tried to find meaning by building huge homes for himself, by building gardens, by building big ponds to water all these trees that he got. It gave him happiness for the time he was building it. And then in a minute, we find out that when he realizes that once he's dead, who's even going to be able to take care of it? They're not going to care about it like he did. Okay? He tried to find happiness in his possessions. That same thing. If you go in verse 7 and 8 of chapter 2, he bought slaves, both men and women, and others were born into his household. He also owned large herds and flocks, more than any of the kings who had lived in Jerusalem before him. He had it. He had more than anybody, but yet he keeps not finding happiness in any of it. Okay? The last thing he found, or he was looking for happiness in, was pleasure. Okay? Verse 10 in chapter 2 says, anything I wanted, I would take. I denied myself no pleasure. Okay, if you go back and study a little bit, he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. Now to me, that's work. That's not pleasure. Okay? But he didn't find it there either. He did not find it in pleasure. Nothing that he could do. No amount of vacations found him happiness. It did for a season, but not for his life. So as he goes on, he starts uncovering some things. And he starts realizing that maybe we need to enjoy life as we go. Okay? When you get to chapter 3, verse 13, he says, and people should eat and drink and enjoy the fruits of their labor, for these are gifts from God. So even though we work hard, we need to enjoy it. He also tells us that we need to have friends and fellowship. Chapter 4, verse 9, 2 people are better than one, for they can help each other succeed. Students, that goes for you. Everybody in this room is why we meet in this room. Fellowship, friends. When you guys get to school, find a friend. Stick with them. Because if you fall down, they can help pick you up. If you're doing wrong, they can call you out. Vice versa. If they're doing wrong, you have a duty to call them out. Okay? You go to the verse that Rhonda read today. Ecclesiastes 6:6. Solomon tells us there that even though you could live 1,000 years twice over, you could live 2,000 years, but still not find contentment. So no matter how long you live, if you don't take the time to smell the roses every now and then, enjoy what you're doing, everyone, and since he must die like everyone else, well, what's the use? No use even living. Okay? And so that's the thing for me, is the fact that we are here, we are put on earth to live for a certain time. And we need to enjoy our time here, no matter what we're doing. We need to not worry about adding years to our life. And even though that's okay, we don't need to add years to our life. We need to add life to our years, because we're not guaranteed tomorrow. So you need to make the most of today. And my conclusion with Solomon comes with this. Go all the way over to chapter 12. Okay? And in 13 and 14, Solomon has all this stuff. He did all the work for us, and he's going to tell us what the answer is. Sometimes we choose to not follow it, or not read it, or not think. We're going to go on our own. But he says this, that's the whole story. Here is my final conclusion. Fear God and obey His commands, for this is everyone's duty. God will judge us for everything we do, including every secret thing, good or bad. So with that, students and church members, I want to give you this. We should not worry about everything we have. No matter, some of you guys, we're going to read in a minute and see where some of you guys are going to go to school. Some of you guys are destined for greatness, okay? There's people in this room today that's done great things, okay? But it doesn't matter if you are going to be maybe the first person to set foot on Mars, or you're the person that does the lowliest job that you could ever think of. We're equal, okay? We are supposed to use our time, our talents, our position, our possessions to do God's work, no matter how big or how little it is. If God blesses you with wealth, use it to do His work. And that goes for everybody in this room. Use it. What you're going to leave there is everlasting. Because you have a $5 million home doesn't mean nothing. Somebody new will move into it next week. Okay? But no matter how much or how little you've got, serve the Lord. Okay? If you're a doctor, you become a doctor, go on a medical mission trip. Go serve with somebody. Go serve in a soup kitchen every now and then to bring you back to earth. Go get involved in a church. When you guys get to school, go get involved in a church somewhere. Make friends. Make a difference in the kingdom. Okay? Mentor a younger person or find an older person and serve them when you're gone to college or when you're here. It doesn't matter. Just do something. And guess what? Sharing the gospel is free. No matter how much or how little you make, share the gospel with somebody. Okay? So live your life to the fullest. Don't worry about adding years to your life. Add life to your years. Don't be afraid to take a chance. Failure, it's just another day. Okay? I started with an Abraham Lincoln quote, and I'm going to end with something about Abe Lincoln's life. If you didn't know this, you're going to hear it. Abe Lincoln ran for office 16 times before he was ever elected to anything. Most people would have stopped after once or twice. But Abraham Lincoln ran 16 times and kept going and then ended up President of the United States. Okay? So, I know we got to get moving. We are going to stop now. If you don't know Christ today, today's the day it doesn't matter that we're celebrating our seniors. If you don't know Christ, we're going to have a time of invitation here. If you need to join the church, if you need to rededicate your life, we're going to do that right now. So if you want, Duncan and I are going to be down front here. If you need prayer, come down, visit with us. But don't get in a hurry to leave because we're still going to have our senior presentation when we finish this. And so let's start with that now.